I wanted to do a quick tip video on this weekend's episode, which was Lee's Ferry. I got a bunch of comments on it, and there was just one thing I wanted to share with everyone in the course as I was editing the video, and that was when our guide was sharing with us kind of the history of Glen Canyon Dam and whatnot. You might have noticed that there were a bunch of different angles. I kept cutting away. There was him talking, and of course we were looking at the dam, and then there was him explaining things to Trish. And this gives the illusion that there's like 2 or 3 cameras when, as you know, there's only one camera.
You see it there, Trish? The hole that's just in the mountain there, you gotta really see it?
Oh, yeah.
So that tunnel is one of about 10 tunnels that are side tunnels that go to the tunnel that helped them create the dam. So when they built the dam in 1958, they started and they go, well, geez, how are we going to get all this equipment up? The barges can't get up, it's too shallow. The helicopters at the time were too weak to get the heavy equipment up and over and into the canyon without crashing. So one of the engineers that worked on the Hoover Dam project said, well, look, let's just tunnel down, go there and build the dams.
So how do I do this? Is actually very simple. I set up the camera in the primary spot mostly for audio, and that's going to be, I'm pointing my Rode mic directly at Jimmy so that I can get nice, good audio. I have to be sure that when he says, hey, look over there, Trish, that I don't move the camera over there, because now as he continues to talk, my Rode mic's pointing that way and not this way, and it changes the audio levels. So when someone says, oh, I just need to lift up this little hatch right here like this, you just keep your camera focused on the person, and you start making a little mental checklist of all the things that you have to go back and record. So I keep my camera right at Jimmy, and then I start playing around. You know, I zoom in a little bit, and I get him focused on his face, and I get that background blurry. I get kind of the right look I want. And then when he's done talking, I think, okay, that's kind of the narrative piece to that story. Then I moved behind him, and I put the camera just directly behind him while he was telling Trish something completely else. I just made sure that his lips were not in the video, so I didn't have to line up any lips. That way I'm able to use that footage as if he's saying things to Trish. He was even using gestures, and the gestures were lining up. And then, once that's done, I go back, and I even tell Jimmy in this case, I say, hey, before we take off, can you just give me a minute? I just gotta do some recording. He's like, sure. And then I go back through a mental checklist of all the things that he mentioned. I go back and I look up at the hole in or the caves up in the rock, or, you know, the water. I get as much B-roll that's relevant to the things he said as possible. And then I know in editing, I can piece all that together to make it look like there's multiple cameras. So it's a simple technique, and I hope it helps for you. One more thing I wanted to mention, I was talking to David Downs, who's a member of the course, and he and I were talking about the video. I was telling Dave how much I was struggling with this video in the beginning, and mostly because I spent about 10 hours looking for the right song. I found pretty music, but it just wasn't the right music. It took a long time. And I started off this episode in Carefree before we went up there, and I couldn't get the ride up to Lee's Ferry to work. And after about 3 hours of editing, I finally said, screw it. I'm gonna start the episode in the boat, and I'm gonna move on to the next segment, and I'll go back to figure that out later. But as it turns out, there was plenty of footage, and we just ended up doing the whole episode on Lee's Ferry, and I actually have some of the beginning stuff in the deleted scenes, which worked out pretty well. So my tip to you is, if you're really struggling with this segment and things just aren't connecting and the music's not working, nothing's really working, go to the next segment of the video and just start working on that. And then once you get a little bit momentum and you get some clarity on the video, then you can go back and you can piece together a different segment. And sometimes, have you ever been in a situation where you do something for several hours and it doesn't work, and you wake up the next morning and you do it in 5 minutes? It's kind of that idea. Move on to something else, get fresh, go back, make it a little easier. All right, so those are the 2 tips for this week. Okay, camera died, and I also noticed that I was editing the footage that I was a little bit out of focus, and the reason for that is that the face tracking sometimes turns off on a Canon camera, and it makes a gray square. And if that happens to you, just know that your autofocus is not working. You gotta turn the camera off, turn it back on, and then you get a white square, and you can set your camera to face tracking, and that way that little white square will hop on someone's face and it'll move around. Point number 2 I wanted to make is, as I was going through and I was looking at that B-roll, some of the documentary footage, how do I get that footage? Well, I use a website called why2mate.com, and you can paste in a YouTube link, and then you can have the option to download it in the highest resolution available. Luckily, those were 720. So that's how I can download those videos and then put them in. And there is a video in the course about using footage that's not yours. So go check that out. It's in the bonus videos. All right, so that is it for this video. Hope it was helpful, and there is still so much more to come. I've got a video about your personal story I'm working on, and there's also a video about how to remove some of background noise and that kind of stuff that I've already done. I just need to find time to edit. So, all right, that is it for now. We'll guys catch you later. Go.